Every civilization leaves a door someone forgot to open. This is case file number 13. Welcome to Sacsayhuaman, where ancient ambition meets geological defiance just outside the historic core of Cusco. Here stands one of the largest and most sophisticated fortresses ever constructed by the Inca Empire, perched dramatically above the sacred city on a rugged hillside overlooking what was once the formidable fortress complex that guarded its southern flank. The site is defined not merely by its strategic elevation, but by an engineering feat that continues to baffle modern architects. Massive limestone blocks fitted together with such precision that it appears nothing could fit between them. As cameras pan across the jagged skyline, viewers are confronted with walls composed of irregularly shaped stones weighing up to 120 tons each, yet standing in a continuous zigzag pattern without visible mortar or gaps large enough for even a blade of grass to slip through. This monolithic architecture was achieved using sophisticated cutting and polishing techniques that likely involved the use of hard stone tools and immense human labor over decades, if not generations, rather than any supernatural intervention. The sheer scale suggests a society capable of mobilizing thousands of workers simultaneously while maintaining an unyielding standard for quality control across such vast distances from their workshops to this final assembly point on the mountain. Some researchers speculate that the tight tolerances seen here may have been influenced by precise astronomical alignments or local seismic knowledge, allowing the structure to withstand violent earthquakes common in the Andes over centuries of recorded history and beyond. While no definitive record explains every nuance of how these stones were transported from quarries miles away up steep slopes without modern machinery remains a subject of ongoing archaeological study rather than confirmed fact. What stands today offers undeniable proof of Inca ingenuity. As shadows lengthen across the dry stonework under the Peruvian sun, one cannot help but feel a sense of quiet awe at a structure that has resisted time and tectonic stress while keeping its secrets locked behind walls too tight for nature to penetrate or even imagine fitting between. At first glance, the outer perimeter of Sacsayhuaman appears to be a chaotic jumble of massive rocks tumbled down from a nearby mountain face, yet closer inspection reveals an engineering marvel that defies simple explanation. Some of these limestone monoliths are estimated to weigh between 120 and 200 tons each, equivalent to 20 or 30 modern heavy-duty trucks compressed into irregular forms. Quarry masters transported these titans several kilometers across difficult terrain using only human muscle, animal power, and sophisticated logistical planning, moving stones so large that even today's most powerful machinery would struggle to lift them without specialized equipment. The sheer scale of the effort required suggests a society capable of mobilizing resources on a magnitude previously thought impossible for pre-Columbian Andean cultures. What truly separates Sacsayhuaman from other ancient fortifications is not merely its size, but the precision with which these erratic shapes were fitted together without mortar or binding agents. No two stones in the complex are identical. Each possesses unique protrusions and indentations that lock into one another like an intricate three-dimensional puzzle designed to withstand immense seismic force. This irregular polygonal style creates a continuous surface where friction alone holds millions of tons in place, seemingly anticipating earthquakes centuries before such tectonic threats were fully understood by modern science. The interlocking geometry ensures that any vibration is dissipated throughout the entire structure rather than causing catastrophic collapse, turning potential destruction into structural resilience through sheer geometric necessity. Some researchers speculate that this mastery over stone was not merely a matter of brute force or trial and error, but reflected a deep, almost spiritual understanding of local geology and astronomy. The fact that these giants were sourced from specific quarries miles away indicates a centralized command capable of long-range resource management without the aid of written maps or contemporary compass technology as we know them today. While no alien involvement is necessary to explain such achievements, the absence of any recorded mechanical aids leaves us with a lingering sense of awe regarding what human ingenuity alone could accomplish under extreme duress. Standing before these walls now feels like witnessing a silent testament to endurance and skill that transcends time. Step closer to the perimeter and observe how these monolithic blocks meet without a single grain of mortar binding them together. The Inca stonemasons achieved this by treating each contact face as if it were being carved in real time against its neighbor rather than pre-shaping stones for an abstract void. They would grind, file, and polish the surfaces repeatedly until they meshed perfectly with their adjacent counterparts, creating a joint so tight that even a modern steel knife blade cannot be inserted between them. This feat of precision was not merely aesthetic. It served as a structural necessity in a seismically active region where sudden quakes could easily topple walls built on unstable foundations or weak binding agents. Modern engineers and architects who have spent years studying the site through close inspection, laser scanning, and stress testing confirm what ancient observers intuitively understood. Friction alone holds these massive granite pieces together against immense lateral forces. The absence of mortar transforms the wall into a single, interlocking unit where each stone bears weight upon another in a complex system of compression that resists shaking rather than fighting it. When an earthquake strikes today, instead of collapsing like conventional masonry structures with rigid joints and soft fillers between blocks, Sacsayhuaman flexes slightly before snapping back to its original alignment, proving the efficacy of this ancient seismic isolation technique over centuries of violent tremors. Some researchers speculate that such extreme attention to detail suggests a level of mathematical understanding or perhaps spiritual discipline regarding geometry far beyond simple empirical trial and error for their era. Yet we must remain grounded in observable facts rather than fantasy explanations involving extraterrestrial intervention or mythical lost races. The reality is simply staggering. Generations of artisans mastered the art of grinding stone with such patience and skill that they eliminated gaps entirely, relying on gravity and friction to keep thousands of tons from sliding down a steep mountain slope for over 500 years. Today, when wind howls across Cusco, it passes through no cracks because none exist between these colossal forms standing defiant against time and disaster. When we look upon the sheer face of Sacsayhuaman today, it is easy to be awed by the absolute precision of every joint where no blade can fit. Yet this unyielding perfection hides a sophisticated engineering secret that has protected these ruins for nearly 6 centuries while the stone buildings erected above them crumbled into dust. The Spanish colonizers who arrived shortly after arriving in Cusco brought with them their own architectural traditions, relying heavily on mortar to bind bricks and stones together. While they built churches and palaces directly atop Inca foundations, those newer structures failed catastrophically during severe seismic events that merely caused minor settling at the base of the ancient walls. The Spaniards viewed the lack of adhesive as a deficiency, failing to understand that leaving the joints empty was actually an intentional design choice rather than a construction error or primitive oversight. The true strength of these monolithic blocks lies in their ability to move without breaking during violent tremors. Unlike rigid structures held fast by cement, which tend to shatter when forced beyond their limit, the irregular interlocking shapes of Inca stonework allow individual sections to flex and shift slightly against one another. Imagine a massive puzzle where each piece is custom cut not just for perfect alignment in stillness, but specifically to slide incrementally under immense pressure without snapping off. When an earthquake strikes with enough force to liquefy the soil or tilt the ground beneath Cusco, these massive walls act as a single organism that breathes rather than fractures, absorbing kinetic energy through micro-movements at every seam. This documented flexibility explains why centuries of destructive quakes have worn down the mortar bonded structures built by later civilizations but left the Inca fortress standing firm amidst the ruins it outlasted. Some researchers speculate about ritualistic or spiritual motivations behind such complex seismic resistance, suggesting that ancient engineers understood Earth's rhythms long before modern seismology existed. However, regardless of whether this knowledge was inspired by celestial observation or deep empirical study, the result is a physical testament to survival through adaptability rather than brute immobility. The stones do not fight the ground they stand upon. Instead, they negotiate with it, settling and readjusting after every shake until stability returns. It stands as a stark reminder that sometimes the greatest strength comes from the ability to yield slightly under pressure rather than resisting everything rigidly. As time has passed and generations have risen and fallen around these walls, only this method of construction remains standing because nature itself validated its design through repeated destruction elsewhere. When the Spanish conquistadors first breached the defenses of Cusco in 1536, they did not see a sacred sanctuary, but a formidable military bastion. Colonial chroniclers rushed to document what lay before them as an impregnable fortress designed by the Inca to intimidate and control their vast empire through sheer mass and precision. They spoke of walls constructed with such terrifying speed that even nature could find no purchase, noting how not a single blade of grass dared grow in the narrow fissures between the massive blocks. To these early observers, Sacsayhuaman was purely a machine for war, a stone monster raised to guard against rebellion and project imperial power across the Andes. Modern archaeology has since complicated this singular narrative with evidence that suggests the site served purposes far more complex than mere defense. Excavations have revealed intricate drainage systems, carefully oriented stairways, and chambers that align suspiciously well with celestial events rather than just tactical advantages for soldiers moving along a rampart. Many scholars now argue that while defensive utility was certainly present, the layout points strongly towards ceremonial function, integrating religious rituals directly into the architecture itself. The sheer scale of the stonework defies simple military logic, suggesting these stones were chosen and placed with an eye on the sun's path as much as they were for blocking arrows or repelling invaders. Ultimately, historians agree that no single interpretation can fully capture the reality of Inca intent at Sacsayhuaman. The site likely functioned simultaneously as a fortress during times of crisis and as a temple for state-sponsored worship in peaceful years, blurring the line between strategy and spirituality that modern observers often try to separate. Some researchers speculate that this duality was intentional, designed by Pachacuti to project an image of omnipotence where military might sanctified religious authority just as divine favor justified conquest. We may never know exactly how much weight each function carried in daily life for the Inca elite, but we do know they stood before a structure that refused to be categorized easily, defying our modern need to choose between being built by gods or generals. When Spanish chroniclers arrived in Cusco during the 16th century after the fall of the Inca Empire, they were struck by the sheer scale of Sacsayhuaman's construction and sought to quantify it through their own lenses. Their written accounts describe a monumental undertaking that engaged thousands of workers over several decades under the direction of Emperor Pachacuti and his successors, painting a picture of an entire labor force dedicated to this singular project. These narratives emphasize the logistical complexity required to move massive stone blocks from distant quarries to the fortress site, suggesting a level of centralized organization that seemed almost supernatural to the newly arrived Europeans who viewed such feats as evidence of divine favor or terrifying power rather than human engineering. It is crucial, however, to approach these historical testimonies with an understanding of their context and limitations, for they were penned decades after the conquest had fundamentally altered Andean society. The chroniclers recorded what they heard from survivors and interpreted through a cultural framework that often exaggerated Inca capabilities while minimizing their achievements or attributing them entirely to magic and sorcery rather than mathematics and state planning. Consequently, the precise numbers of workers cited in these texts cannot be independently verified against surviving Inca records because such documents never existed. The empire utilized a sophisticated system of oral tradition called *quipu* for record-keeping, which does not translate directly into written lists or names that could confirm specific headcounts decades later. Some researchers speculate that the dramatic numbers reported by early writers may have been intentional exaggerations designed to intimidate potential conquerors or to honor the glory of Pachacuti's reign in a way that resonated with Spanish sensibilities regarding imperial grandeur. Without access to Inca administrative archives, we must rely on these post-conquest descriptions while acknowledging their inherent biases and lack of contemporary verification from within Andean society itself. This gap in historical evidence means that while the spirit of massive mobilization described by the chroniclers likely holds a kernel of truth, the exact scale remains shrouded in ambiguity, forcing modern historians to navigate between documented testimony and necessary skepticism regarding what can truly be proven versus what is simply recorded as legend. Now, the part historians won't confirm. Here's what if Inca masonry relied on a sophisticated geometric understanding that was deliberately kept within an elite guild of master stonemasons, known only as *amadas*, or specialized engineers who guarded their methods with absolute secrecy. While standard construction techniques were widely taught and applied across the empire to build roads and temples in accessible regions, the specific knowledge required to shape these monolithic blocks at Sacsayhuaman may have been treated as a state secret passed down orally through generations of apprentices who never wrote it down. This suggests that the precision we witness today was not merely the result of accumulated trial and error, but rather the culmination of a highly restricted curriculum designed exclusively for those sworn to silence regarding their craft before the empire's collapse. The disruption caused by the Spanish conquest may have been more catastrophic than simple military defeat. It effectively erased the living memory of these techniques just as quickly as it extinguished political power. When the traditional social hierarchy was shattered and the indigenous population decimated, the oral traditions explaining how to split a massive rock into such perfect geometries likely died with their keepers or were suppressed by colonizers seeking to dismantle Inca authority. Without written records or functioning schools of masonry from that specific era, modern historians struggle to replicate these feats, leading many to assume simpler explanations like seismic activity assisted the builders. Yet, if we acknowledge this gap in historical documentation, it becomes clear that a profound technological capability was lost not because humans could not achieve such precision, but because no one knew how to teach it once the guardians of that knowledge were gone. Today, some researchers speculate that the true method involved using mortar and ice wedges combined with an intimate understanding of rock stress points, a technique so effective yet so quiet in its execution that it required a level of patience and coordination rarely seen outside this specific cultural context. Without iron tools to cut or drill directly into granite or sandstone, these engineers must have manipulated the material itself through leverage, thermal expansion, and hydraulic pressure with an accuracy that seems almost impossible by modern industrial standards alone. The wall stands as both a testament to their unmatched skill and a tomb for lost knowledge. Every perfectly fitted joint whispers of a tradition that flourished briefly before vanishing into obscurity, leaving us to wonder exactly what happened behind the closed doors where these secrets were forged. Despite centuries of meticulous study by some of the world's leading archaeologists and structural engineers, a complete consensus has yet to emerge regarding how these colossal stones were cut from quarries miles away, transported up steep slopes without wheels, and fitted together with such precision that not even a blade of grass can fit between them. The sheer scale of the labor required remains staggering. Yet no single technique has been definitively reconstructed or proven as the sole method used by the builders of Sacsayhuaman. While traditional Inca engineering practices involving rope and lever systems and human muscle power offer plausible explanations for moving smaller loads, the specific mechanics behind maneuvering blocks weighing up to hundreds of tons remain a subject of intense debate within the scientific community. The mystery deepens when one considers the seismic resilience of the wall itself. During earthquakes that have shaken Cusco since colonial times, the stones interlock and shift slightly rather than crumbling, only to settle back into their original positions with remarkable stability. Some researchers speculate that this behavior might imply a deliberate design feature involving precise friction coefficients or hidden wedging techniques lost to history, though others argue it is simply the result of skilled craftsmanship passed down through generations before colonization erased most indigenous records. Even today, modern construction experts continue to examine these joints for clues they can replicate in their own projects, yet every attempt to perfectly mimic the original fit falls short of the impossible tolerance found at Sacsayhuaman. But case file number 13 wasn't the strangest door we found. Case file number 14 is about a stone platform in Lebanon holding the largest cut block ever moved by human hands, and no one agrees on how. Some say it shouldn't be opened at all.